Good morning. I had a pastor who once told me that he can assess something about a man by two things. You know what you look at? You look at his checkbook and you look at his calendar, and you can tell a lot about a man. My mom always told me that you can tell a lot about a person, especially a man, by looking at his belt and by looking at his shoes. And there's a lot to learn about somebody like that. When we get into Galatians chapter 3, verses 15 to 29, we've already looked at Paul's calendar. We saw how he spent 15 days with Peter in Jerusalem. We saw how he went to different places and how he grew. In chapter 3, verse 15, you're going to start to look into the mind of Paul. And when you can look into a man's mind, you can really find out a lot about him. Paul is brilliant. Most people would call him a genius. He is an Einstein type of a person. And what Paul says in Galatians chapter 3, and really throughout the book of Galatians, is that nothing you do is because of your bloodline. Nothing you do is because of your family. It's only about faith. And there's always only been one way to have a relationship with God, and that is through faith.
The same challenges that he's going to deal with here in Galatians 3. And anytime, this is what I would tell you, anytime you get to a passage and this one's it can go right over your head, slow down. Don't speed up, because there's going to be a lot of rich theology in here. But the same thing he's dealing with there is that people thought, I am saved, or I'm in God's good graces because of the bloodline that I have, the heritage. And that happens a lot of times in American Christianity. People will be like, well, my grandmother prayed, my grandfather pastored in the church forever, and like their good graces are going to get me in the good grace of God. But Mark told me something one day that I thought was great. He said, God doesn't have any grandchildren. He only has children. Right?
It's only through faith.
It's only through faith, and that's a personal walk. You go to heaven in a single file line. Groups of people don't all get in together. So let's dive into it.
Drop down to verse 17 in Galatians chapter 3. Here's what it says. What I am saying is this, that the law, which came 430 years later, does not invalidate a covenant previously ratified by God. Here's Paul's argument. He's trying to tell the Galatians that we are no longer under the law. You've learned that as we've gone through the book of Galatians so far. We are no longer under the law. So let's talk about the law for just a second. The law has two parts to it. The law's first part is regulatory, and it regulated the way a nation came out of Egypt. This was a redeemed nation coming out of Egypt, going into something completely different. And God wanted to regulate some of the things that were going on in their life. That's when you see the sacrificial system, you see all the cleanliness issues, all the food issues, all those kinds of things. And that is regulation. And as a New Testament believer, we are no longer under that part of the law. But there's also a part of the law that is revelatory. And what I mean by that is that it reveals something about God. And throughout the Old Testament, just like anywhere you read in the Bible, it reveals something about how God is a loving, caring God, and that's how he wants us to be. But here's one thing the Old Testament doesn't do. Remember, it's regulatory, it's revelatory, but it's never redemptive. Only Christ and the sacrifice that he made allows the New Testament to be a redemptive book for us.
And it was literally meant, all of these laws to keep, was to bring you to a position where you go, I've got to have a Savior. I can't do this.
Exactly.
I will never be perfect enough, never be good enough. God, send a Savior for me.
Verse 19, why the law then? It was added because of transgressions, having been ordained through angels by the agency of a mediator, until the seed would come to whom the promise had been made. It's a relationship with Christ. It's always been about faith in him. If you dropped all the way down to verse 25, I just want to call something to your attention. It says, but now that faith has come, we are no longer under a tutor. So we are no longer under the law in terms of it being regulatory in our life. And a really interesting part of verse 25, at least my Bible leaves this out. It actually says, but now the faith has come. This is the faith that Marcus was talking about. It always pointed to a Messiah. And in the New Testament, Paul's saying that Messiah has come in the book of Galatians, that Messiah has come and you no longer are under the law. So when the Judaizers brought this legalism, Paul reacted very quickly.
Yeah. Love it. You guys have a great day.
See ya. Enjoy Galatians.